Imagine the overwhelming pain, the shock, and the horror that you experience when you suddenly realize that someone is attacking you with a hammer. Consider the derangement and depravity of an individual that not only commits cold-blooded murder, but uses a damn hammer to do so. These are 3 stories about men who committed savage killings by way of hammer.
Prosecutors are laying out their case against a man accused of killing 2 men with a hammer and holding a woman against her will for 8 days. Jamie Jones is being held without bail on charges of murder, kidnapping, and domestic battery. Prosecutors say Jones and the woman were in an abusive relationship.
31-year-old Jamie Jones was living with his 18-year-old girlfriend in an apartment located on the south side of Chicago. They'd been together for about 3 months, but the 2 of them had recently been kicked out by their roommate, 51-year-old Aaron Washington. They were still welcome in the home, though, and continued to stay there occasionally. On Thursday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day of 2022, the couple gained entry to the apartment while no one was home. Soon after, Washington arrived at the residence. The 2 men shook hands. Then Jones produced a hammer and proceeded to smash his former roommate in the head with it. Jones continued beating the man with the tool. Then he grabbed a pillow and smothered him to death. Jones' girlfriend saw Washington's bloodied body lying on the floor before Jones ordered her into a bedroom. The next morning, the woman came out of the room and saw that the body had been moved into a closet and Jones had cleaned up the blood. Subsequently, Jones kept the woman captive in the bedroom. He'd allow her out of the room only when and if she asked permission to use the bathroom. The next day, the woman's grandmother called her several times before Jones finally allowed her to answer the phone. He stood over her and warned her to make no mention of the murder. A day or 2 after that phone call, a 51-year-old man named Arronis Jackson came to the apartment looking for Washington. Jackson knocked but got no answer, so he used a key to enter. Jones met Jackson at the door. The 2 men spoke, and Jackson said he was there because Washington owed him money. Jones and Jackson walked towards the living room. As they entered the room, Jones brought out his hammer, raised it, and bashed Jackson in the head with it. Then he proceeded to beat the life out of the man. Jones moved Jackson's body into the same closet where he'd left Washington. Afterward, he had his captive girlfriend to clean up the blood, telling her that he was too tired to do it himself. Over the course of the next few days, Jones kept the woman in the bedroom and repeatedly assaulted her by striking her with a hammer and a broomstick and by choking her until she'd lose consciousness. He occasionally left the apartment for short trips for cigarettes and cleaning supplies. Then on Friday, March 26th, 8 days after the horror story began, Jones left to pick up a work ID for a new job. He threatened his prisoner with violence if she attempted to leave. She waited an hour to make sure that Jones was gone. Then she ran to a nearby gas station and called her family. She was taken to a local hospital where her injuries were treated, which included claw marks from the backside of the hammer. She told authorities where they could find the bodies of Washington and Jackson, as well as the hammer Jones allegedly used to kill them. Police found the bodies of the 2 men in the apartment. On the following day, officers were canvassing the area near the apartment building and came across Jones. They arrested him. Several witnesses confirmed that Jones was in the apartment during the time of the murders, and surveillance footage recovered by police shows Jones in and around the home throughout the 8-day period. Jones is being held without bail on charges of murder, kidnapping, and domestic battery. The motive for the killings is not known.
But then later admitted he hit the victim numerous times with a hammer while inside his bedroom, claiming self-defense. Stamps admitted he dragged the victim down 3 flights of stairs and outside, leaving him with no clothes on.
On the evening of Saturday, April 23, 2022, a 31-year-old man named Gregory Stamps visited a Chicago nightclub and met a man named David Castile, who was 42 years old. Mr. Stamps got into Mr. Castile's car, and the 2 went back to Mr. Stamps' apartment on Chicago's South Side. At some point during the night, the men were in the bedroom together. This is where Mr. Stamps grabbed a hammer and employed it in carrying out a savage assault on Mr. Castile, in which he bashed the man in the head with the makeshift weapon somewhere around 24 times. The man initially survived the attack. He was still alive when Stamps dragged him down 3 flights of stairs and left him in an alley outside the building. Soon, a resident in the building noticed a trail of blood in a hallway that led to the rear of the building and called police. When police arrived, they found Mr. Castile next to a dumpster in the alley behind the building, covered in blood. Mr. Castile was transported to a local hospital where he succumbed to his wounds. Soon after, officers entered the building and found Mr. Stamps in a stairwell with blood all over his hands and on his clothes. Mr. Stamps initially explained his appearance to officers by saying that he fell down a flight of stairs and landed in a pool of blood. Officers told Stamps that he was being detained. He then changed his story. He said, quote, "I'm gonna be honest. He was just trying to rape me." Mr. Stamps was arrested and police searched his apartment. In the bedroom, they found a mattress which was drenched in blood. Police also found a hammer. Medical examiners later determined that Castile had suffered 20 to 30 injuries to his skull and to his hands and arms that indicated a weapon such as a hammer had been used in the attack. Stamps apparently had no injuries. In custody, Stamps admitted to the killing and told detectives how the night had unfolded. He met Castile at a club and accepted a ride home from the man. Castile tried to rape him, he told the cops. He said he beat the man with the hammer, then dragged him down the 3 flights of stairs and out to the alley. He couldn't explain why he was in possession of Castile's wallet or why he had not called 911 to report what had happened. Stamps had been released on his own recognizance earlier this year while facing a misdemeanor battery charge in a separate case. Also, he was on parole after pleading guilty in 2013 to attempted murder and aggravated domestic battery. He claimed self-defense in that case as well. An assistant public defender, appointed to represent Stamps, argued he should be given a bond because he had given a, quote, lawful justification for the killing. Stamps is being held without bond and is scheduled to appear in court again on May 16th.
He beat that family to death with a hammer. A 3-year-old little girl survived the attack, but with serious injuries. Just days prior to that, he broke into a home in Lakewood and attacked a woman, crushing her skull.
It wasn't until a DNA match in 2018 that police even had a solid suspect.
In August of 2021, this man, Alex Christopher Ewing, was convicted of murdering 3 people almost 40 years ago in 1984. Then, in April of this year, 2022, he was convicted of a 4th murder that also happened in 1984. He had not been a suspect in the crimes until the year 2018, when DNA evidence finally linked him to the crime scenes. Alex Ewing's bloodthirsty rampage lasted 8 months and spanned 3 states. The horrible tale goes like this. On January 10th of 1984, in Lakewood, Colorado, a 50-year-old woman named Patricia Smith was at home alone having a hamburger for lunch when a man entered the residence through an unlocked garage. The man was Alex Ewing. He accosted the woman, sexually assaulted her, and beat her to death with a hammer. Then he posed the woman's body. Her hands rested on her chest as if she lay in a coffin. She lay atop a carefully folded, blood-soaked Winnie the Pooh blanket that belonged to her grandchild. A part of the blanket lay across her face as a pool of blood collected around her body. Before making his escape, Ewing took a gold necklace and 2 diamond rings from the woman and left the hammer he had used to kill her lying next to her. 6 days later, in the wee hours of a Monday morning, in the city of Aurora, Colorado, about 15 miles east of Lakewood, Alex Ewing slipped into another home, again through an unlocked garage. The residents of the home were a 27-year-old man named Bruce Bennett, his 26-year-old wife, Deborah, and their 2 daughters, Melissa and Vanessa, who were 7 and 3 years old, respectively. Bruce Bennett was upstairs and likely came to the staircase to investigate an unexplained noise in the house when he encountered Ewing. Ewing was armed with a hammer and a knife he'd taken from the home's kitchen. In the ensuing struggle between the two, Bennett was repeatedly struck with the hammer and slashed with the knife. He suffered numerous severe wounds about his arms and body. Ewing bashed in the man's skull with the hammer before slitting his throat. Blood was splattered and smeared up and down the staircase. Ewing then proceeded into the master bedroom where he found Bruce's wife. Ewing sexually assaulted her, stabbed her, and bludgeoned her to death with the hammer. He then went into the girl's bedroom. Melissa suffered the same horrific fate as her mother. Little Melissa was also beaten with the hammer, but miraculously survived with a shattered skull and jaw, broken bones in both arms and legs, and psychological scars that remain with her today. Ewing is suspected of being the perpetrator of 3 other vicious attacks that occurred about a week before Patricia Smith was murdered. On January 4th, a man snuck into a home in Aurora, the same town where the massacre at the Bennett residence occurred, and used a hammer to beat James and Kimberly Haubenschild. James Haubenschild suffered a fractured skull, his wife a concussion. Both survived. On the same day, also in Aurora, a flight attendant named Donna Dixon had just driven into her garage when a man attacked her. He raped the woman there on the concrete floor of the garage and beat her with a hammer. The brutal attack left the woman in a coma. Ewing has never been charged in these earlier assaults. Less than 2 weeks after the Bennett family slaughter, Ewing was arrested in the state of Arizona as a suspect in a crime unrelated to the ones he committed in Colorado. He'd apparently hitchhiked to the town of Kingman, which is near the intersection of the Arizona, California, and Nevada borders and hundreds of miles west of the Colorado crime scenes. According to authorities in Kingman, Ewing entered the home of a man named Roy Williams again through an unlocked door late at night and attacked the sleeping man, beating him nearly to death with a 25-pound rock, then fled the scene, according to an arrest report dated January 27th, 11 days after the last Colorado killing. Williams' injuries would take more than 100 stitches to close. Later that day, police came across a hitchhiker who tried to run from them. It was Alex Ewing. They took him into custody on suspicion of attempted first-degree murder and burglary in the rock attack, and ultimately he was held at a facility in St. George, Utah, because the lockup in Kingman was overcrowded. About 8 months later, on August 9th, Ewing was being transported from St. George to Kingman for a court hearing. During a stop for a bathroom break in Henderson, Nevada, Ewing escaped. That night, Ewing allegedly snuck through the open back door of a home there in Henderson. Christopher Barry, who was 34 at the time, and his wife Nancy, who was 24, were asleep. Nancy got out of bed to prepare a bottle for their baby, who was crying. When she got downstairs, she saw a man standing in the doorway to the home with an axe handle in his hand. The woman began screaming and ran back to the bedroom. As Christopher Barry awoke, Ewing used the axe handle as a club and began beating the man with it. At some point, Nancy tried to defend her husband, attempting to block the blows with her hands and arms, and as a result, both her wrists were broken. At some point, Nancy managed to grab the phone and dialed the operator and was on the phone to dispatch during a portion of the beating.
And I just had a call with a woman screaming in the background, just bad, and sounded like someone was beating her.
Ewing's savage battering of Nancy continued until the woman pretended to be dead, then he absconded from the residence. Nancy's husband, Christopher, was comatose for a week as a result of the beating. 2 days after the assault, Ewing was captured by a park ranger near Lake Mead, a little over 20 miles east of Henderson. He was later convicted of attempted murder, burglary, and escape, and sentenced to 110 years of incarceration with parole eligibility after approximately 40 years. As a result of that conviction, the charges against him in the Arizona rock attack were eventually dismissed. In 2018, more than 3 decades after the 1984 Colorado hammer murders, authorities used advanced DNA testing technology to identify Ewing as a suspect in the crimes. Ewing's genetic material matched DNA found in the homes where Patricia Smith and almost the entire Bennett family were killed. This was about 3 years before he would be eligible for parole in the Henderson, Nevada axe handle attack. Later, he was returned to Colorado to stand trial. In 2021, he was tried and convicted of the Bennett family murders and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms. In April of this year, 2022, in a separate jurisdiction, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and 2 counts of felony murder in the killing of Patricia Smith and was sentenced to an additional 20 years to life. Alex Ewing will spend the rest of his life locked behind prison walls. Peace, you guys. Thanks once again for checking me out, especially all of you returning viewers and subscribers, and all of you who have liked and commented or watched the video all the way to the end. Whether it's this video or a video that I did in the past, I really appreciate all you guys, and I appreciate the role that you guys play in keeping this channel growing. I've got new stuff coming soon. Stay tuned. Peace.